Welcome to Mommy Heal Thyself. We feature guests who provide you with the tools, resources, and strategies you need to say no to a life of pain and suffering from all forms of preventable disease, toxic drugs, and unnecessary surgeries. We hope to inspire you to boldly reclaim your ability to heal and to serve the ones you love. Welcome, my ladies, to another episode of Mommy Heal Thyself. Today we have with us Christina Lynch. She has spent more than 15 years of her career propelling small businesses and entrepreneurs forward in their industries. She has a notable track record for utilizing a flexible, non-judgmental approach with her clients and partners, and has promoted the success of positive and profitable businesses affairs for every party involved. Christina is the Chief Executive Officer of Trydent Consulting and has worked with over 200 businesses in a wide range of industries. Her passion is assisting and elevating small businesses through her expertise in accounting, human resources, and program management. She received her master's degrees in human resources and employment relations from Penn State University, and her bachelor degrees in accounting, finance, human resource management from Florida State University. Christina is a business consultant with the Small Business Development Center at FAMU, winning Regional Consultant of the Year Award in 2021. She was recognized as the 2022 Recent Achievement Alumni Award recipient for the Florida State University College of Business. And in 2023, she was the Outstanding Alumni Award recipient by the Florida State University Black Alumni Association and 2023 finalist for Women Who Mean Business by Tallahassee Women's Magazine. So, that's a whole heap of accomplishments, Christina. Thank you so much for joining us today.
No problem. I'm happy to be here.
Today we're going to be focusing on entrepreneurship, the tax advantage for financial empowerment. And the reason why this is so critical to us is because a lot of us moms, are in the space where we're kind of playing with the idea of starting up a new business. And sometimes we're skittish, and some of us have actually started a new business, but haven't really gotten a real foothold on how to truly grasp the tax advantage of utilizing entrepreneurship in terms of helping us in the space of financial empowerment. So I would love for you to tell us a little bit more about how you came into this space and what this has meant to you.
Sure. So I am definitely one that follows the way. And when I was looking at where I was in my career, I would admit I'm a job hopper. So as I was hopping the jobs, a lot of times my prior employers would want me to stay part-time. And then I worked for a high-tech startup company in Innovation Park that was located in the same building as the Small Business Development Center. And so it piqued my interest because I really enjoyed working with small businesses and found myself in several situations where folks wanted to, pick your brain, ask for advice. And so as I was in my early career learning, I really started exploring this idea that I could support others on a greater scale. So through this support really of the Small Business Development Center at FAMU, they empowered me to start with volunteering and teaching workshops, and eventually convinced me to be a contract consultant and support as I could. And from there, it really was the beginning of this evolution of me being a business consultant with extensive experience, given that just because someone saw something in me that I necessarily didn't see at the time. But as that's progressed, you kind of learn and go change things along the way, and refine my pathway forward. I realized that I really was meant for entrepreneurship, but it was hard to identify it because I don't come from a family of entrepreneurs. So it's very different than my upbringing. And so it wasn't that I needed to job hop, I just needed to make everybody my client instead.
So tell us a little bit about what do you mean when you say that we need to utilize entrepreneurship as a tax advantage for financial empowerment?
Sure. So when you're an entrepreneur, depending on your tax structure type, in general, there are various approaches that we could take that can best benefit our lifestyle.
Mhm.
Um, and I say that as a caveat because as I'm in this, the longer I'm in and the more that I learn, I recognize intention is really important when
Mm,
you're navigating through your financial, I guess through your financial health. But as an entrepreneur, we have the opportunity to take advantage of deductions that a normal taxpayer with a W-2 cannot take advantage of. And when you're at certain income levels, it may not matter as much. But as you see your income growing, what we call as the middle class recognizes they don't have as much protection to mitigate their tax liability as would an entrepreneur.
mm,
Given that the reality is if you're an entrepreneur, you're more than likely obsessed with what you do anyway. So, you're choosing to make your entire life about your business. So now that when I go to lunch, because, I am having lunch and then I'm trying to double it down as a meeting and be like, yeah, just have lunch with me. That's deductible versus if I was a W-2 employee and I'm going to lunch with my coworkers, that is not deductible.
mm,
So there's ways in which we can navigate and structure our lives to be able to take advantage of tax deductions that can control our income tax bracket,
mm.
versus in other situations, you may not be able to and get stuck in that middle ground where you're paying a lot in taxes, and there's not much room for strategy.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that you mentioned that I would really love to hone in on a bit there is that you said that you didn't come from a family of entrepreneurs. So I was curious, do you see a difference in the mindset of people who are entrepreneurially geared versus your W-2 people?
Oh, for sure, for sure. One, I tell it's a bad joke, y'all. I'm gonna put that out there for the listeners. But I always say I'm toxic. Like I'm just like, oh, I'm toxic. Like I just like volatility. But the reality is I don't. I'm an accountant. We are like probably the most stable of, well, the engineers first, but I'm one of the most stable of the entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
But typically when you're in a W-2 role, it's all about stability and it's about I just being able to foresee
Mm-hmm.
what's in the future, right? You have a lot more control and timing associated with your work environment. And it's typically in a more limited scope to where you can turn it off and go home. Or even if you work an extra hour a day, you can still go home and have balance. When you're an entrepreneur, and depending on the side of the fence you're on, there's opinions in every regard, but you're generally speaking, working more than 40 hours a week. Now, granted, everyone's financial goals are different, everyone's lifestyle is different, but when you are of a certain demographic and you have to bootstrap your way through it
Mm-hmm.
because of sometimes things that we can't control,
Mm-hmm.
you're putting in 50, 60, 70 hours a week, and there is no off when you are the boss.
Yeah.
And I would say prior to the scaling process, when you can't afford a lot of things, you're making all the decisions, you're the point of contact, you're the face of the business, and you don't have as much luxury of being able to just go on vacation for a week and turn everything off,
Mm-hmm.
without there being some type of significant consequence to it.
Yeah.
So I would say, generally speaking, stability, of not just, well, financial stability, time stability, schedule stability,
Mm-hmm.
so there's a lot, it's much more of a roller coaster when you're an entrepreneur.
Hmm. So now, when we look at the role of entrepreneurs, is there a common mistake that you find that people make as they're trying to transition into that entrepreneurial space?
I would say that lack of planning is definitely a deterrent for a lot of people. And hey, don't get it twisted. I did not have like a full business plan before I started. So I'm not saying that everyone should. You know what? It would have helped me. It would have helped me. But, we don't plan. We take advice from the cousins and the friends that are really not supporting our business. Or we see a need but we don't assess if the target market actually cares about that need. So when we don't plan and do our research, look at our competitors, truthfully, the part that people really don't like doing is the money, the financial part. Um, the it can save a lot of hardship. So you're still going to experience the hardship, but if you know that it's a 2-year journey or a 3-year journey, you can prepare yourself better versus if you don't do it at all and you think you're going to make a bunch of money in 6 months and now you've gone through all of your resources, you're discouraged, and now you're having to re-strategize in order to survive. It can make all the difference in the world when we do our homework on the front end versus waiting to see what happens throughout the process.
So what are some key components of the homework that we should be doing ahead of time? Like, what is it that you would suggest to a woman that is considering shifting into the entrepreneurial space?
Yeah, so first we must know who we're trying to target. Your target market cannot be everyone. I understand everyone can have and use the thing, but your target market is never everyone. So identifying who is your ideal client is really important. And that's one. Two, understanding what is it that you're offering and not just the actual product or service, but what solution are you offering for that target market? Because when you sell it, you're not just going to say, like, I'll use the example, it's freezing in my office today. So granted, we didn't have AC last week because of the storms, but you know, it would be a great for someone for me right now, a corporate blanket. So but it's not, you're not selling me a blanket, you're selling me comfort. I'm cold. But but it's like, what is the solution that you're offering? If you had a blanket and you went into every workplace trying to sell it, you might sell out. But if you but if you're in summer heat at a farmer's market, no one is thinking about a blanket. So, we want to know, like, what is your solution to that product or service that you're offering? And then knowing what is the cost to sell it. What is the cost to sell that item or service? And what is the cost to operate the business? Because we want to know, how much do you have to make to break even? How much do you have to make money? And what are the amount of units that you must sell to get over the hump? So those things are going to help us in assessing our strategy. When we have that information, if I know that I need to sell 100 blankets because it's cold, then we can look at, where is my target market? How do I reach them? How do I market to them? But to get to that point, we really do need to know the numbers and who that person is that you're trying to sell to, and what is it that you're selling deeper than just the actual product or service.
So now let's zoom back into your realm in terms of looking at the tax advantages. What are some of the things that we can do to set us up properly to be able to take advantage of the tax structure the way it is currently?
Yeah, so one, I would say deciding on your business entity type is important because it's going to dictate how we organize our data. So typically folks start with a single member LLC, or some are like, I don't even care about that, I just want to be a sole proprietor. It's all about risk. So the first decision is, how much risk are you willing to take? So that, once we get past that point, then we determine how are we going to structure our finances. So organizing our money is really important, not just on when on what we receive it, but what happened to it. And accounting is nothing more than organizing the information. So let's take the numbers out of it for a second. And we need to be able to organize, how much did I spend on my automobile, on travel, on advertising, on office supplies. So having a system in which we can organize that information is important, because in the event you were to get audited or something happens, it is on you, the taxpayer, to justify that, not your tax preparer and no one else. It's on you. So I think that information is critical for to make sure you can prove in that documentation. It's also going to be critical for you as a business owner to be able to plan for the future, because we're going to use historical data to help us in planning forward. But when we're thinking about the tax advantage, the first thing that comes to mind if you're considering starting a business is that you can write off startup costs, even if the business has not started.
Wow.
So that's an important one to note. And that's one people leave a lot of money on the table because they're like, well, I'm not in business yet, but you can write that off. So, let's organize that information so we can take advantage of that benefit. Having a home office is a deduction.
One
Oh,
thing
sorry.
before you go further, sorry. What are some examples of startup costs that you would be able to deduct?
Sure. So like if you're starting your website, if you had to hire a website designer, your domain information, if you had to do any like buying initial of products or supplies to help you get started, your business cards, your business registration with the state of Florida or the state in which you reside in. So really the things that directly contribute to starting the business are going to count.
Okay, all right. So, before we go any further, you also mentioned that the first decision that we have to make is to determine how much risk we're willing to take, and that will determine what type of structure we have. Could you explain a little bit more about what you mean by that?
Absolutely. So for instance, when I first started and I was like, it's just bookkeeping. I don't need a business. I'm just going to do it by myself. And so I'm the sole proprietor. I'm like, I'm just going to start, doing things in X, Y, and Z. But then I had a hiccup. We're going to call it a hiccup. And I realized really quickly I was not willing to risk it all. So I said, stop.
I want to keep my house.
Right.
Girl.
The little bit I have, I want to keep.
Exactly.
So I was like, well, that limited liability company looking real fresh right now. So then I started an LLC. And then the same thing, you start going, I'm official now. I have a business. And then I had another little hiccup. And then I realized I'm going to get insurance because this is a hiccup. That's going to be really expensive if it was to blow up in my face.
Yeah.
So then I'm like, okay, we're gonna get insurance now because as I'm learning, I'm realizing I was accepting more risk than I acknowledged and actually understood to be taking. And then as I've grown, now I'm an S corp because I'm definitely reaping benefits of my efforts, but that means my taxes are increasing and I don't like that. And I don't want my business on my personal tax return anymore.
Yeah.
So then I'm like, I want to be an S corp. So, yep. And then that way I can have a W-2 and be an employee of my business and it have a separate tax return than my personal. So in the event I have to submit anything, my social security number is not on there.
Oh, interesting, interesting. So now moving forward, what is the major tip that you would give to someone who is either considering going into business or may already be in business and may not necessarily be savvy with regards to taxes and how they operate and the fact that this is the final frontier of financial empowerment? I mean, we have lots of cases right now, wink, wink, that are going on that tell us the power of recognizing tax structures.
Yes, it is a thing. I will say that you should be considering your taxes all throughout the year. It is not a January, February, now we address the taxes. By the time we get to tax season, the tax year's over. I can't help you.
Done.
I can't say, oh, how do I find more deductions? Well, if you didn't spend the money, I don't know to tell you. It's too late. So the best time, it's like you prepare to always be prepared. And that's one of these situations where as we are in business and growing in business, what differentiates those that are maximizing their tax position from those that are not, it's having a tax planning strategy. And it's understanding, one, how does your business work? And can you leverage that to take advantage of the tax law? But it requires you to know your business intimately on a higher level. So working on your business, not in your business.
Hmm. So what things should be a part of an overall tax strategy?
One, identifying and knowing what your financial goals are. And I'm going to just have little sub bullets there for a second. If you know you're going for financing, purchasing a home, getting a loan in the next 2 to 3 years,
Mhm.
it's not going to help you to drive down your income. So a tax planning strategy is not always paying the least amount of taxes, but it's also supporting what your financial goals are. It's
Mm.
also important, sub bullet two, to say that if you are constantly driving down your income and not paying taxes or self-employment taxes, you're
Mhm.
not paying into Social Security, and you're going to be unpleasantly surprised once you're ready to retire and accept Social Security.
Mm.
So one, knowing your financial goals are really important
Mhm.
because it has to tie in for it to work. Two, I would say, is understanding how your business operates and how your entity type operates,
Mm.
because that dictates what you can take advantage of and what pathway forward. So if you're a sole proprietor or a single member LLC,
Mhm.
there's certain retirement accounts that you can have. So you cannot set up a 401k with you as an employee because you can't be an employee of a single member LLC.
Mm.
So then you have to determine what other retirement accounts do I want and how much can I deduct tax on a tax level from each type.
Mm.
So there are instances, if you are a single member LLC and you have a high net income, you might get what they call a SEP IRA because you can deduct up to 25% of your income. And that helps to drive down your taxable income. So even your retirement accounts have different tax advantages.
Wow.
But it goes back to the end. I would also say, making sure you find someone that can work with you so they understand your overall vision and can support you in that. But tax planning is not a one and done. It is a long-term strategy. And so we can talk about all the things, but it takes time to implement things.
Mhm.
And we just want to be intentional and consider it as a marathon and
Mhm.
not a race. So when someone says, I need to make all these changes in 3 months, I'm like, well, not saying it's impossible, but the likelihood that it's going to stick is low because I've been doing this for 15 years and I've seen what happens. I just end up having a bunch of meetings without results.
Mm.
So now it's like, this is a long-term strategy. Let's look at the most impactful items and start at the top and we work our way down, but it might take a few years to get there because you're still operating a business and trying to be profitable in addition to all of the other things we're working on.
So now, what are some qualities or characteristics that we should look for in someone like yourself who is a tax strategist or business strategist? And in alignment with that, what are some ways that people can learn more about working with you? Do you have any classes or workshops or resources that we can connect with?
So I would say that um, there's a shortage of accountants. So most accountants are busy. There is not this, I mean, granted, communication skills is a real thing with accountants too, but we're all busy.
Wow.
So I would love to say someone who has time for you because that is important, but I also want to acknowledge there's a shortage of accountants. So
Wow.
space and grace is like my theme for 2024 in our industry. Um, but someone that you can comfortably communicate with.
Hmm.
So are they actively listening and willing to help you? I will acknowledge that even for myself, it takes time because I am trying to, like, you want to serve everyone, but
Mm.
the consequence of wanting to support everyone means is I have a longer lead time.
Yeah.
And so do I just keep you at the door and say goodbye, or do I say I can help you, but it might be 3 weeks until we get together? So I would say one, someone that you can comfortably communicate with and someone that is actively listening and helping you towards that. Um, Granted, depending on your expectations, pricing can vary widely, but I will admit that it goes back to the quality of that relationship is generally more important. In our space with taxes, You can get a cheaper price. You can
Oh,
always get a cheaper price, but are you getting what you need? Is it aligned with you? So alignment is important. Intention is important. Someone you can grow with in the long term. So trying to identify a long-term relationship is really important. Then knowledge. So do they have the proper credentials to support you? Like I'm not a CPA, but I am an enrolled agent with the IRS. So I acknowledge that I don't want to be a CPA. It's not interesting to me at all. To me, it's like, and it's ironic. I ended my career in one of my vows. I broke one of my vows, which is I would never work for insurance or an accounting firm.
uh-huh.
And it's like that. To me, it's like nails on a chalkboard. But I will be an enrolled agent
Okay.
and be able to prove, okay, I do have the credentials to support you on the tax side.
Mhm.
But even in that space, the tax law changes every year. The
Mhm.
IRS rules change all the time. So it's always a learning curve for most professionals.
Mhm.
We have a base knowledge, but it's a moving target.
Mhm.
So do they have the baseline knowledge to support? But just know that we're going through this together. So that would be the other piece. I would say alignment with you as a person and your goals, active listening, someone that you can communicate with. And then the other side of it is, do they have the credentials and the baseline knowledge to be able to support you in what you're trying to do? As far as reaching out to me, the best way to is through actually the website trydent.org. It's TRYDENT.org. And there is an inquiry form on there. And what that does is allow us to see what you need help with.
Mhm.
And then it allows you to schedule that initial consultation without you waiting 3 weeks for me to contact you back. So it just magically shows up. And I'm learning the power of streamlining operations. So as I am trying to learn this myself, I'm recognizing that I am the bottleneck in many cases, and we're trying to fix that so I can continue to support more people. I'm hoping to have more resources that will be readily available to folks that have more common questions.
Mhm.
It's actually a project for this fall. So
Okay.
hopefully there'll be stuff that can direct on the website soon, but it's not
Awesome.
ready just yet.
And ladies, I'm going to be having the link to Trydent.org in the show notes, so you don't have to try to remember what she said and all that kind of good stuff. And one last question, which is when we're preparing to work with someone like you or you, is there some pre-homework that we need to do to make that process more at ease?
That is a great question. And that is something that I am working on myself. Um, it depends.
Okay.
So yes, having your information compiled is always helpful. Having financial statements and not 12 months of bank statements is always helps the process.
Mhm.
But depending on your business type and entity, it's hard to say what those documents are.
Okay.
And it's something that I'm trying to figure out, how can we pin down
Mhm.
that way. If you're a single member LLC, this is what you need. If you're an S Corp, this is what you need. But generally speaking, bookkeeping throughout the year makes it so much easier to support you. Um, Otherwise, it's additional work and additional time that can slow the process down.
Awesome. Well, my dear, I thank you so very much for taking the time to share this valuable information with our audience because I'm telling you, ladies, you've got to have a gig, especially in today's world. You cannot afford to be just a W-2. You have to have a side hustle. And hopefully, that side hustle for some of you, gals, will expand to the point that it will allow you to be liberated from the shackles of W-2 world. But that's another story altogether. I am biased. In any case, we look forward to seeing you in our next episode. And until then, peace and blessings. Thank you for tuning in for this episode of Mommy Heal Thyself. If you like what we're doing here, please share, subscribe, like us, and leave a comment.